Hello, my name is Amber with Madison Rose Quilting Co. and I'm going to show you how I make the Nora's Garden quilt block. This is an applique quilt block and it really goes pretty quickly. They're all the same. So once you get the hang of it, it's pretty simple pattern. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your fabric for the flower and you're going to put it face down on your ironing board. Then you're going to take the piece of heat bond. I use heat bond light iron-on double-sided adhesive. It's bumpy on one side and it's paper on the other side. And I put it over the back side. The bumpy part goes the back side of my fabric. This will be on your ironing board. And then my heat bond says to press it for 2 seconds. Check your directions on yours on how long to press it for. So press it for 2 seconds. That should be sufficiently adhesed to your fabric. And just make sure when you, if you can pull it up easily from the edges, it's not. I do that for the flower and for the center of the flower. Again, I do the fabric face down and again the bumpy side face down onto the back, and I press it to adhere it. Then what I do is I go ahead, you can do this before or after, it doesn't matter. I take my circles and I just trace them, the center. I usually do it after it's ironed on. You can do after, before, it doesn't matter. And again with the flower, and I trace them with where it says flower template, that's the top. That's how I trace it onto my, I trace it onto the back side rather than the fabric. That way when I cut, I don't have to worry about any marks, so I can use a pen, pencil, whatever I want to trace it onto the back. It's nice and smooth. Then I cut it out, and I will warn you, if you're cutting out, don't use your nicest scissors because this is paper. You don't want to dull it, but it does actually cut very nicely. You just cut around. I cut right on the line as best that I can. So then that turns out like this. So it's a little bit heavier. You can see it's a little bit bent. And one thing I like about this pattern is that it's kind of a whimsical flower, so they don't have to be perfect. If you want to make it perfectly centered, that's totally up to you. On mine, I don't worry about that because it is a little bit whimsical. So now that you have it cut out, and for me this saves a step, so I'm not cutting out the individual fabric and then cutting out the heat bond paper. I'm doing it at the same time. So then after you cut it out, the heat bond paper should come right off. So you take that off and you're left with, it's kind of shiny on the back of your fabric. So once again, it's the same technique, is you go ahead and you center it where you want. If you want it exactly in the center, go ahead and fold your flower in half each direction, and then you can also fold your square that it's going onto. This is your 10-inch square. You can fold it and find your halfway marks. So it depends on what you prefer to do on this. You want to get it pretty centered. Then you go ahead and press it again. Again, it's just your 2 seconds, the same that you pressed it before. This is on your ironing board. I'm just doing it to show you, so I'm not on my ironing board, but normally I would do this on my ironing board. Press it, flat, now it's stuck. I do the flower first, and then I go and add a contrasting center to the flower. So you will notice that the centers are not perfectly round. That was intentional with my design. So you can fold it in half if you'd like and put it on your halfway marks if you would like to have it perfect, or you can just kind of place it and have it be whimsical, play around with it as much as you like. I do generally in the center, but I don't worry about perfectness on this particular pattern. And then again, you go ahead and press it for your 2 seconds each. And now your flower is done. The one thing I like using about using the heat bond is that when you go ahead and sew it on, it's going to give you a stiffer fabric here, and it should be less fraying. I have seen people that just glue it down with like a washable Elmer's glue, which you totally could do if you don't have the heat bond. Just be aware that this is raw edge applique, and so depending on how you stitch it on, you're probably going to have more fraying around the edges. So I like the heat bond to minimize that. So then I go ahead and take it to my machine, and I sew about an 1/8 inch in, 1/8 to 1/4 inch. So you can see around the outside here, and then I go around the outside of my flower. This one I used all white thread, so it is a little more contrasting here if you don't want it quite as contrasting. This one, for example, is that same blue fabric, but I used more of a gray thread, so you can't see it as much on the darker fabric. That's a matter of preference, what you like. You can also do a blanket stitch, which actually goes around the outside and in, so that could help with fraying as well, depending on whatever look you want. So once you have all of your blocks done, then you go ahead and follow the diagrams in the pattern on how to lay them out. You can lay them all out with your flowers going the same direction. Or if you want it to be more whimsical, turn your flowers around a little bit, and then it will be more like dancing flowers instead of them all being exactly the same. So you've got some room to play and make it your own. Can't wait to see what you make.